Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Scott. We're running a little afternoon discussion here, talking about the Detroit Lions and quarterback Matthew Stafford. Make sure you guys are tuning in to my show, the Late Night Sports Report, and then also later on this evening, we have another installment of the Front Porch Tailgate podcast with Byron Hazley. Make sure you're connecting with Platform Sports Media and myself on all social media channels. We have pages on Facebook, Instagram. We also have content available on Twitter and YouTube. But let's dive into the discussion. For those of you who are here today, thanks for being here. Make sure throughout the show you guys are giving your feedback in the comments section below, and then also, if you engage heavily in the discussion, we might actually invite to bring you on live with us. So, with that being said, we're going to dive right in here. So, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler polled more than 50 NFL executives, coaches, scouts, and players to name the top quarterbacks for the upcoming 2020 season. And Detroit Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford landed in the top 10. Now, throughout the league after this poll, it really makes a lot of sense that Matthew Stafford's very widely respected and maybe a little more appreciated than fans initially would suggest here in Detroit. So I really wanted to gain your guys' thoughts and see what exactly it is that you guys think about Matthew Stafford. Because time and time again, what I hear are the grumblings and the rumblings, because let's face it, here in Detroit, we've got a down period in sports. We haven't had very many good teams in the past few years. At the turn of the century, we were accustomed to a lot of winning with the Pistons, with the Red Wings. The Tigers were rolling a good product out onto the field, even though they came up short a few times trying to win a World Series. But the Lions have never really been able to get over the hump, I guess you would say, and just establish themselves as a legitimate, respectable NFL franchise. This is a group that's never been in the Super Bowl since its history, and we're going on what? We're over the 50 Super Bowl mark at this point. And digressing back to Matthew Stafford, he's been shouldering a lot of the blame lately, but I guess my question really to you guys is, what exactly would this team look like without Matthew Stafford on it? Because we saw the second half of last season what that product on the field was like, and let me tell you, it was not very thrilling at all. Matthew Stafford is a surefire talent. He came in as a number one overall pick. He was one of the best quarterbacks to come out of the college ranks about 10 years ago when he came out from Georgia. And what you're seeing here with this poll with Jeremy Fowler is that there are plenty of executives and teams around the league that think very highly of Matthew Stafford. So I guess my question is this: why exactly does he not get that respect or the love that he deserves here in Motown sometimes? Why are we blaming Matthew Stafford? It's something that really eats me up time after time. This guy has had the benefit of playing with Calvin Johnson at periods of time. He's had good receivers like Golden Tate come and go through town, but at the same time, throughout his entire career, he's rarely had a defense. He's never really played against a good, solid, respectable offensive line unit. And he's never had a running game to complement him. And in turn, the Lions, time after time, have been playing from behind. That's why Matthew Stafford has some of the best stats you'd see by a guy at this point in his career when it comes to passing. But also at the same time, the Lions haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher since, I believe, 2013 with Reggie Bush. It's absolutely insane that they have failed to find complementary weapons to help Matthew Stafford. And so what we've had here in this Matt Patricia era over the past couple of years is a lot of skepticism. We've seen a team that actually had made the playoffs under Jim Caldwell be torn down, torn apart, and a lot of players have been shipped out of town, like Darius Big Play Slay, Golden Tate, among others. And now it's left a lot of people really scratching their heads, wondering what exactly the Detroit Lions are hoping to do. They're under new ownership with Martha Ford's daughter, and the team is hoping to really rejuvenate themselves and modernize. They're going to get involved with analytics and all those things. But at the same time, everything all goes back to Matthew Stafford. And people are wondering what exactly the team is going to do moving forward. It's a big mystery considering what's going on with COVID-19. And with the Lions just in general, there's so many question marks. They've addressed a lot of concerns in the NFL draft back in April. They rounded out that offensive line. They went and got some players to play on defense. They drafted Okudah in the first round, which was a fantastic pick. And then they drafted DeAndre Swift from Georgia, who, let me be completely honest with you, is going to be a fantastic quarterback or running back for the Detroit Lions. This is a guy, when I looked at his college stats, I wasn't really too thrilled about what I saw. But when I went and checked out his game film, I was absolutely blown away because DeAndre Swift was a guy in my mind appearing to be Barry Sanders reincarnated. Now, he wasn't running sideline to sideline, but the one thing the guy was doing was making big plays and making people miss. And it seemed like every time he caught a pass out of the backfield or broke a run to the outside, the guy was going for at least 15 yards, which is something the Detroit Lions desperately need. So it seems like all the stars are aligning for Stafford. And it's got me really excited about what exactly is going to happen this upcoming season. Make sure you guys are leaving your comments below because I want to know what you guys think about Matthew Stafford. I want to know what exactly you think of the Detroit Lions. Have you guys lost all hope at this point? Is it SOL, same old Lions? Or do you actually have optimism for the future? Because I know I do. For the first time in my lifetime, the Detroit Lions actually put together a good NFL draft. To me, it looked like there were a lot of quality picks from a lot of quality programs and quality conferences. And there's something to be said for that. Make sure you guys are leaving your comments in the chat below about Stafford. But we're going to take a look at the poll that ESPN's Jeremy Fowler conducted. So coming in at number one, obviously we had Patrick Mahomes ranked above everybody. Pat Mahomes just got a $500 million a few nights ago from the Kansas City Chiefs. And after 2 full seasons as a starter, it seems like he's destined to be absolutely incredible, a surefire superstar in the making, a global icon, and potentially has the ability to become the greatest quarterback of all time. Now, I'm not ready to crown the guy yet. He's got a long way to go before he can be mentioned in the same breath as Tom Brady when we're talking about GOAT status. He's not Peyton Manning at this point. He's not Dan Marino. He's not John Elway. And there's a lot of other quarterbacks. Brett Favre is one, Joe Montana. He's got a lot of work to put in to get to the level that those guys were at. But let me tell you, the talent that you see from Patrick Mahomes is undeniable. I was one of his biggest critics earlier in the year. And if you listen to some of the old episodes of the Front Porch Tailgate podcast with Byron Hazley, he'll be the first one to tell you that I was not a big Patrick Mahomes guy. And they labeled me during the tapings or recordings of those shows as a Patrick Mahomes hater. Well, I wasn't a Patrick Mahomes hater. I just wasn't ready to crown him as the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I said, let the guy win a championship first, and that'll go a long way for him to earn my respect. And that's exactly what happened when the Chiefs made that great comeback and beat the San Francisco 49ers down in Miami at the Super Bowl this winter. Now, let's switch up gears here and move to the number 2. Russell Wilson was brought in at the number 2 spot in the poll. Not surprising. Russell Wilson is a guy who, in my opinion, is probably the second best quarterback in the NFL besides Patrick Mahomes. He's a guy who can drop back. He can make all the throws. He's got an incredible work ethic, and he's a leader for that Seattle Seahawks franchise. I have no problem with Russell Wilson coming in at number 2. The thing about Russell Wilson is he doesn't necessarily get tons of love because he's playing out on the West Coast in a different time slot. And let's face it, Seattle's not a major media market. Back, in their heyday when they won the Super Bowl and they lost to the Patriots in that second one, when they had guys like Marshawn Lynch, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, and a bevy of other players, the main narrative all the time was about the defense and the Legion of Boom. Russell Wilson at the time was a very young player, just making his way in the NFL, and he was playing very well, but he really wasn't the one drawing headlines all the time for the Seattle Seahawks. Now that the Legion of Boom is kind of faded and that team is not necessarily the best team within the NFC West division, they've kind of given way at this point to the San Francisco 49ers. You're not hearing as much about Russell Wilson anymore. So I think it's a ultimate testament by the rest of the league to bring him in at the number 2 spot. And it goes a long way to let the fans know what exactly the league, the NFL, and his peers think of Russell Wilson. Now, the first controversial ranking that I have is with Aaron Rodgers coming in at number 3. This is a guy that's been on the decline for the past 3 or 4 years. I would at this point consider Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson to actually be ranked in the 3 spot ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Jimmy Maddie's commented, he's listening in right now, and Jimmy said, or asked the question rather, how is Breeze 5 and Jackson 6? Breeze should be 2 and Wilson at number 3. Now, Jimmy, I don't know exactly why you think Drew Brees should be ranked number 2. I'd love to bring you on to the show right now, invite you on. I could send you a link through Facebook and we could discuss it if you want to, but Drew Brees, in my opinion, is a guy who definitely is on the decline. He's still playing at a very, very high level, but at the same time, you saw by the end of the year last year when he returned from injury, he wasn't able to make a lot of the downfield throws that he's made in the past. And that's not to take anything away from his talent or the New Orleans Saints and their ability to actually go out and win a Super Bowl in the upcoming season, but I wouldn't rank him ahead of some of these other guys by any means at this point. So let's dive back to the list. Jimmy, send me a chat and let me know if you want to get on the show. We can talk it up more. I'll bring you on live right now if you want to. But let's take a look here. So we got Deshaun Watson coming in at number 4, who Deshaun Watson's been a fantastic quarterback since he's been in the league as well. I think, they're selling him a little low because of the fact that the Texans haven't really done much in the playoffs. They haven't advanced very far when they've been there. And they're just kind of a team that's got to really get over the hump. Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, should definitely be ranked lower on this list. And Lamar Jackson, the reigning NFL MVP, should definitely be ranked higher. Now, I don't have a problem with Drew Brees coming in at the number 5 spot because, in my opinion, he's one of the better quarterbacks on the better teams in the league. He's just getting older, and I'm concerned about whether or not he can hold up. Last year, he had the thumb injury. Teddy Bridgewater filled in for him, played absolutely incredible. The team didn't really seem to miss a beat, but it seems like the past few years in the playoffs, every time these guys get there, they hit a roadblock. That's the Minnesota Vikings, and they end up coming up short. This is a team I expect to be in the this is a team I expect to be in conference championships regularly. And at this point, it seems like they're slipping a little bit. And let's face it, the division that they're in, it's probably one of the toughest divisions in the NFL for quarterbacks at this point. You just had Tom Brady move over to Tampa Bay. You have Teddy Bridgewater, who I think is very underrated, who I think is going to blow up this year playing for Matt Rule and Joe Brady in Carolina. And then you also have Matt Ryan, who was in a Super Bowl just a couple years ago and has been a very good quarterback in the NFL, but hasn't played on very many good football teams with the Atlanta Falcons. So digressing back to the poll, Lamar Jackson's coming in at a 6. I think it's very, very misguided. I'm not sure why the rest of the NFL isn't so big on Lamar Jackson. Perhaps they think he's like Patrick Mahomes last year when I thought he needed another year to show me his worth. So maybe they're saying, hey, you just won the MVP. Now show us you can go out and win an AFC championship. Show us you can win some playoff games and show us you can win a Super Bowl. Then coming in at number 7, Tom Brady. I have no problems with Tom being right here. I think it's a good spot for him, a good slot. He had a down year last year, but let's face it, he was still an above average quarterback in the NFL, and he was playing with a very poor offensive line and had absolutely no weapons. He lost Gronk in retirement. Antonio Brown was suspended, for the rest of the year after one game, or they cut him, whatever, and really he seemed to lack that on-field help, which in the NFL, when you're playing a game that's 11 on 11, when you don't have suitable tools around you, it can definitely affect your team's performance. Now, this is a team that still, despite all that, went to the AFC playoffs, made a little bit of noise, and ultimately lost to the Derrick Henry-led Tennessee Titans, which I don't know if you got a chance to watch that game, but Derrick Henry was just bulldozing over Patriots players. Let's see here. Bill Ennis. Dump Stafford, man. Tua for MVP. Bill, should I bring you on the show? I'd love to have you on here. Send you a link right now. We'll get you on live. I'd like to know exactly why you think the Lions should dump Matthew Stafford, because the rest of the league seems to think pretty highly of him. This is a guy who was voted into the top 10 by 50 NFL executives, players, coaches, and scouts. Now, there's a lot of people out there that say everyone agrees that Stafford's arm talent is top 5 level. Now, last year, he was on pace for nearly 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns before a back injury obviously cut the season short for him. He was phenomenal from inside the pocket, according to Jeremy Fowler, with the league-leading 82.7 quarterback rating, a 66% completion percentage. He averaged almost 9 yards per attempt, and he had 17 touchdowns compared to 3 interceptions. So not only was he moving the offense down the field, Bill, he was also taking care of the ball. And when he did throw that ball, the chains were moving. The problem wasn't the Detroit Lions offense last season before Matthew Stafford was injured. The problem was the defense and the lack of a running game that couldn't hold on to a lead late. Now, a lot of people out in the Motor City and in Detroit are really skeptical and very critical of Stafford because of the fact that he's got such a massive contract, right? Well, with everything that's been going on in the past few years, and with where the quarterback market is right now, in the wake of Patrick Mahomes signing that massive $500 million deal, Matthew Stafford's contract isn't even in the top 10 anymore. So the argument that he's not worth what he's being paid and we can't build a team around him, it's hogwash at this point, because every year the salary cap adjusts and inflates. And if it's adjusted to the point where there's quarterbacks in the league out there making an average of $35 to $45 million, obviously Matthew Stafford is a great value and very affordable for what he brings to the table for the Detroit Lions, which is not only a high caliber arm, toughness and grit. He hasn't missed that much time besides last year and I believe his first or second year in the league. And he's been the only form of stability for this morbid Detroit Lions franchise over the past 10 years. So I don't know where this whole Tua for MVP thing comes from. Bill, we're going to talk about that another time, but let me tell you this right now. I am not high on Tua Tagovailoa, whatever you want to call him. I believe he's going to be a bust. I think he's brittle. I don't think he has the downfield arm strength that's going to be necessary to have success in the NFL, but I do think you'll see him make some noise this year. I think the Miami Dolphins have upgraded at a lot of positions, and they're going to have a very good football team. Back to the list. Carson Wentz comes in at number 8, and Dak Prescott's coming in at number 9, just ahead of Matthew Stafford. Now, either one of these guys could have been ranked 8 and 9, and honestly, it was nice to see that Dak came in at number 9, because maybe it'll be an eye-opener for him, because his negotiations with the Dallas Cowboys over his contract over the course of the past almost year and a half now are getting to the point where they're absolutely exhausting. The teams can't agree on a suitable average salary value for the longest time. And then he's since been offered a very, I would say, lucrative contract that he still declined because now they can't decide on the years. He wants a 4-year contract, wants to get back out and test the market again and maximize his future career earnings. Well, the Dallas Cowboys want to put him on a 5-year deal and keep him, an extra season. So he's going to play under the franchise tag this year, and we'll see how it goes. I don't think there's a deadline over the course of the next week and a half that the Dallas Cowboys have to get something done with Dak, but I don't think they're going to come to an agreement. I completely believe that this is going to be another Kirk Cousins situation down in Dallas. And let me be completely honest, that Dallas Cowboys team is loaded this season. They are all in to win a Super Bowl. They have picked up a lot of guys. They brought in new coaches. They've went out into the draft and drafted weapons for Dak Prescott to be successful and to go out and win an NFL championship, Super Bowl ring. If he can't get the job done at that point, you got to believe that his stock and his value is going to actually drop, not increase. Because this is a guy who, let's face it, shrinks in big moments and hasn't really done very well when playing playoff teams or teams that are considered to be in the upper echelon of the league. He does a lot of his stat padding against lower level teams that reside near the bottom of the league. So Jeremy Fowler went out and said that most everyone agrees Stafford's arm is top 5 level. And I completely agree with him because Stafford's arm, the guy has a cannon. There were times I remember back 5, 6, 7 years ago, you'd be watching a Detroit Lions football game, and Kelvin Johnson, probably one of the most, I guess you would say, physical players to ever play the wide receiver position. And I don't mean physical in a sense of he was out there laying people out. What I mean is that he had those physical traits that really separated him from the rest of the league. The guy was about 6'6", 250 at times, and he ran like the wind. I believe when he came out in the draft, he ran in the 4.3s. And there were times when Stafford was overthrowing him, going deep, and you'd see Kelvin Johnson fall down, stumble, reaching for the ball. And so I guess it's plenty of evidence for me to agree with Jeremy Fowler. Now, one anonymous NFC executive kind of took a shot at the Lions, and he said Stafford's a major talent who'd probably be a top 5 quarterback with an established franchise. And he said that he can score from anywhere on the field. And I completely believe this to be true because, like we just talked about, Stafford's got the arm strength. So I guess if you guys are out there listening, what exactly is the deal? Why do the fans in Detroit not support Matthew Stafford? It seems like this is a sports town, but at times we're so quick to turn on some of our prominent sports figures. You know, we supported, if you don't remember, we supported the Detroit Red Wings through almost 40 years of losing before they started hitting their stride in the early 90s with guys like Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov, and the rest of the Russian Five. And they eventually added Brendan Shanahan to go along with guys like Nick Lidstrom, Thomas Holstrom, Joey Kosar, Darren McCarty. The list goes on and on. But those are guys that we rode behind and that we supported for an extremely long period of time, despite the fact that they kept losing and they kept falling short and letting us down. It lasted almost 5 or 6 years before they finally got over the hump and won the Cup in 1997. Now, why aren't we doing that with the Detroit Lions? Are we so jaded because of what we've seen on the field and what we've seen by the organization? We've seen a series of miscues. We've seen plenty of bad head coaching hires, and we've seen plenty of very poor front office decisions. And we're in year 3 of Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia's tenure, and a lot of people are suggesting that we're experiencing the same thing again. But for me, really, when I watched the draft, it really felt like finally, for the first time, the Detroit Lions have an identity. They're going to play defense. Obviously, Matt Patricia is supposed to be this defensive guru who learned under Bill Belichick, the best head coach of all time. And at this point, obviously, the jury's still out. His message hasn't really resonated with a lot of the players in the past 2 seasons, and those guys were shipped out of town. Darius Big Play Slay, Damon Snacks Harrison, Quandre Diggs. A lot of those guys are gone now. And what they've done is brought in a lot of New England Patriots cast-offs to try to build this culture for the team to win. Matthew Stafford was playing absolutely phenomenal last year before he got injured, and now the team has brought in more players to support him on the offensive side of the ball, specifically on the offensive line and in the run game with DeAndre Swift. So it's going to be exciting to see where exactly the Detroit Lions go from here. I'll be bringing you guys regular updates about the team throughout the rest of the offseason and through the season once it begins. I'm also going to be covering a handful of Detroit sports, including the Tigers, Pistons, Red Wings, the University of Michigan, and the Michigan State Spartans for Fansided. I just took a offer to contribute and be an analyst for that company. And I'm really excited about it. Make sure you guys are reaching out. Follow me on Twitter for regular sports updates. You can follow me at Michael Scott PSM. Make sure you are connecting with Platform Sports Media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then make sure you check out some of our podcasts. We have the Front Porch Tailgate and the Late Night Sports Report. Those are available on all major platforms like Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, YouTube, basically anywhere podcasts are available. My brother just chimed in. He said the streaming looks good. Thank you, Matt. I'm glad to have your approval. I've been working hard on it. But other than that, if you guys want to reach out, get a hold of me on Twitter or Facebook. Other than that, have a great day.